Welcome to National Park Stamp Quest, a show about stories we carry home from America's national parks, one stamp at a time. I'm Mega Anhelkar, by training a PhD chemist and by profession, someone who invests in biotech. Outside of work, my true love has always been America's national parks. The landscapes, the wildlife, the people, and those small passport stamps that somehow hold entire memories. Each episode follows people, memories, wildlife encounters, quiet moments, everything that make these places stay with us long after we leave. Today's episode may be one of the clearest examples of why this show exists. It's a story about National Park Passport itself. The ink, the places, the pages, and what happens when small object carrying all of the memories disappear. Because sometimes a stamp is not just proof that we were somewhere. Sometimes it carries the whole story. Today, I'm so excited to be joined by Tran, an environmental advocate whose work sits at the intersection of conservation, community engagement, environmental justice, and public lands. Kai is a part of National Parks Conservation Association's Next Generation Advisory Council, and his writing for NPCA includes a beautiful essay called My Most Prized Possession about his passport to national parks, the stamps that he's collected over the years across park travel, and what happened when he lost that passport. This honestly may be one of the most perfect national park stamp quest stories ever. Kai, welcome to National Park Stamp Quest.
My God, thank you so much for that incredible introduction. And it's so great to be here with you today.
I'm so excited to have you because, as I mentioned, I think it's one of the most relevant stories, right? The name of the podcast is Stamp Quest, and when I read your story online, it was the sweetest thing, and I will credit you largely for inspiring the name. I was like, oh my god, this is a story that needs to be told again.
Thank you so much. Yeah, when you had reached out to me about it, I knew I had to chat with you because national park passports and the stamps I've made really were a driving force into the work I've done, and especially with NPCA, the National Park Conservation Association. So thanks again for having me.
Amazing. So before we get into the passport story itself, I'd love to start with you. Can you tell the listeners a little about yourself, your work, and your connection to the national parks?
Yeah. My work with NPCA. So I currently volunteer with them on the Next Generation Advisory Council, which is a volunteer-based organization for folks who are early career in conservation or elsewhere that are interested in protecting and conserving national parks from outside of staff in NPCA. And for those who might not know, NPCA is an advocacy organization that really works to protect and conserve our national parks, expand parks, its funding, and its support from outside of Washington, D.C. And that includes work that's done on the ground in community while also working with policymakers in Washington, D.C. to ensure that our national parks are healthy and resilient for years to come. Beyond that, I also do a lot of other volunteer work. I currently work with Earth Echo International. I serve on their board of directors and a youth leadership council member as well. And it's an ocean-based conservation organization founded by members of the Cousteau family. And they focus on youth-based ocean conservation. And it's been incredible to be with them as well. And a lot of that work is in pursuit of EJ and environmental justice work that I've done. A whole lot of different projects and pursuits I've been able to enjoy throughout my education and professional work. So that's a little bit about myself, but there's a lot of different things that I like to dip my hands into, really feel as if though I'm a generalist, love the interdisciplinary environmental issues. But yeah, thanks again for having me.
So, Kai, I also know your background is in this, right? You are educated in related work. Do you want to talk about that for a moment?
Yeah, so I have 2 degrees in environmental management, a bachelor's of science from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, which sits on the beautiful central coast of California, which I encourage anyone to visit. And there I studied environmental management and had the opportunity to do a lot of advocacy work around the recently designated Shoot Heritage National Marine Sanctuary, which is the first indigenously propose and integrates co-management. And a lot of my work was on that campaign as well. And I also have a degree, a master's of environmental management from Duke University, where I concentrated in community engagement and environmental justice, and was able to continue that work with the sanctuary while I was in school there. And looking forward to other opportunities in environmental advocacy and campaign work as well in the future.
So your background is fit for everything you do and also for this story. And that's why I want to take us back to the beginning. When did you actually start collecting national park stamps? Do you remember the first park or even public lands that you visited and you were like, wow, this is it for me. I'm going to pursue it professionally and personally?
Yeah. So growing up as a kid, I spent a lot of time outside. I grew up in the beautiful Pacific Northwest. So when it wasn't raining, which was frequent, even when it was raining, I was outside. I played sports. I was spending time in the woods. There was a lot of forests in my hometown. So I spent as much time outside and loved the outdoors, but didn't really have that connection to the greater natural outdoors, wildlife, or public lands. However, when I was coming into my time going into high school, my dad proposed an idea to do a father son bonding experience. And we were really interested in doing a road trip centered around national parks. And this was going to be a cross country road trip. It was going to take a month long from Washington all the way out to the East Coast, down to Florida and back up. So we were going to circumnavigate the perimeter of the US and really center this trip around national parks as they're incredible anchors to communities and landscapes of our country. And this was even before I had really spent any time outside or any time in national parks. But this was an opportunity that we were super excited to pursue. So before that summer, Memorial Day in May, we, as a full family, my brother and mom, my dad and I, we all went to Olympic National Park, which is a few hours west of where I live on the Olympic Peninsula. And during that trip, this was, I believe, 2015, I bought a passport there, and this is my first one. I got a stamp, and we spent the weekend, a long weekend in Olympic, and had an incredible time. For those who are familiar with Olympic, saw Hurricane Ridge, went out to the coast, the Hoh Rainforest, we explored Port Angeles and Forks, and it was just an incredible experience. And I as a child loved collecting. I collected Hot Wheels when I was a young kid, loved collecting those. I collected baseball cards when I was a teenager, young teenager, a kid still. So I've always had an obsession with collecting and collections in some regard, and never really gotten into state mail stamps or anything like that. So this was probably the closest thing I had was this opportunity to add on to this little blue booklet where I could stamp places that I've been to. And really provide me an opportunity to remind myself of the experiences I had as I look through each stamp. So I had my first stamp at Olympic, and we had a great time, and that really preceded what followed when my dad and I went on our cross country road trip.
That's so amazing. It's funny because every episode that we've had so far, we've discussed a national park itself, but never told listeners about the passport that inspired the name of this podcast. So, the passport is this blue booklet, which you can buy from national parks or online. And you get a stamp in the park from the park unit. It has the date of the visit. And even though on surface it's, simple, place, date, paper, ink, many people, including Kai and me, passport becomes something more personal, right? It's my record of where I've been. It can be your collector's item. And for me, it's also, I've been to certain parks so many times that every time I look at a stamp, I'm like, oh yeah, this visit I did this versus that visit I did that. So really important and cute. And it doesn't matter how old you are. Everyone has this childlike smile when they go up to the passport stamp. So that's cute. What do you love about a ritual? Is there a routine or is there a specific feeling, or what do you look for when you go and get your stamp?
Yeah, so I think similar to what you mentioned, it's a really awesome opportunity. I feel as if though it's like an adventure in some ways. You spend all this effort to go and visit a national park. And then you go there and it's a signifier that you were able to make this accomplishment and reach the destination, which for some national parks are very hard to get to. Others are much more accessible for folks in their local community, but many national parks are off the beaten path in every literal sense. So it's very much a sense of accomplishment and achievement when you're able to get there and stamp and gracing your visit with that passport stamp. For me, when I get out there, I'm very messy with my passport. I think I may have sent you some photos. If you look at my passport, it is messy. The stamps are not organized, even according to the boxes that they provide you with the different names for different types of stamps. I do go by region, so I follow some of the guidance there, but I'm not very rigid or structured with my passport. It's pretty worn from all the use it's had. But for me, when I go into a visitor center, what I'm really looking for are the different art styles or names and places that are shown on passport stamps. A lot of the stamps that they have that aren't necessarily the ones that have the place and date, as you mentioned, they have images of wildlife or of a landscape or a commemorative stamp that maybe perhaps shows an anniversary or some other commemoration of the park that is relevant to the time of which you're stamping. And those are always the most exciting. So for some, I remember at Great Smoky, they'll have one of a black bear. At Grand Canyon, they have different wildlife and places as well. And some of these stamps are pretty big, so they'll take up a lot of space in your passport. But it's really cool to see that art shown on a stamp, as well as the circle, place, and date stamp that you're able to add there as well to commemorate your visit.
Are you the kind of person who will go and ask Ranger for special stamps that are not usually out at the display?
I typically don't. I think some of those it may depend on when I'm going. If it's, oh, like I missed the date or whatever. If anything, I think that that's a challenge to go when those stamps are out on the display. So, for example, Washington, D.C., the National Mall has a bunch of stamps, and I've had the opportunity to go there during the Cherry Blossom Festival, which is in April, which is an incredible time. And during that time, super exciting to be able to patent the time of which I went there with that stamp. So I actually don't. I didn't know that was insider knowledge. So I'll have to think about that next time.
Um, I think I learned that years and years ago when I went to Yellowstone.
Mm,
I was talking to one of the rangers about where to hike next or something, right? And I told them that it was my 20th or 25th park back then. And I was like, well, I recently started collecting stamps. Few I have missed, but I'm excited to have my Yellowstone. And she told me that you can actually ask rangers if they have any secret stamps, and they had one in Yellowstone. I'll put a picture of it on socials, which they do not offer to a lot of visitors unless you ask for
mm.
it. And it's this geyser going up, and it's such a beautiful stamp. It's big, so it takes up half your page, but just such a gorgeous stamp. And like now, every time I open my book and see it, it just makes me cry. And I'm one of those annoying people who will show up and be like, "Hey, Ranger, do you have a stamp that others would not? Can you give it to me?" That's a secret hack you can ask people.
That's incredible. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. But let me follow up with one of the things you said. So, as you started collecting stamps and as they started adding up, did the passport change the way you experienced national parks?
Well, that's such a good question. I think in some ways the passport to some people it may seem as if though you're trivializing your visit because you're just adding a stamp. It's just adding to the collection. You become more enraptured by the actual pursuit of adding to the stamp than the actual experience of the park itself. And I don't think that that's the perspective that I've gained, and I don't think that's the takeaway that I hope people don't take. But if that's their interest, then that's their interest, right? Um, but yeah, I think for myself, as I added to it, it motivated me to want to go to more and more. And I think in particular, what I noticed were the regions where I didn't have as many stamps. And some regions, certainly the Northwest where I've lived throughout the US in California and North Carolina as well. So in the Western US and in the Rocky Mountains where a lot of the national parks are, a lot of the road trips I've done. And in the Southeast, I've been able to accrue quite a bit of stamps out there. But in the regions where I maybe haven't been to as much, that really motivated me to say, hey, these parks, I haven't been to as many there, especially for myself growing out west. When you think of a national park, the image that you conceive in your mind is the Grand Yellowstone or Yosemite, these vast landscapes. A lot of the national park units are historical places, cultural places, battlefields. They're not typically what you would think of when you think of a national park. So certainly in the Northeast, a lot of parks are in the cities there. They're historical, battlefields, etc. That is where I really saw my passport and felt, okay, this is an opportunity to really broaden my understanding and appreciation for public lands and these significant places of significance in the United States. So from that, noticing some regions I didn't have the same amount of stamps really motivated me to try and explore and visit some of those other regions where there were these national park units that maybe aren't as popular as the Yosemite or Mount Rainier of national parks.
To ask you this, how many national parks have you visited, or how many stamps do you have versus how many national park units have you visited? Have you ever counted?
I have, there's a notepad I have somewhere. I don't know if it's on an old computer or not. I was very lucky through my upbringing to go on road trips, cross country road trips with my family throughout the summers when I was in high school, and then continued that in my own. I have a car camping setup in my car, so I love going on road trips. So for the how many units of the national park, or how many park units? There's over 400 something, right? And then
I
actual
think it's
national
460.
yeah, and then actual national parks, it's over, is it 63 or
63. Yep.
63? Yeah. Um, I know of national parks. I have been to three-quarters of them,
Okay.
I believe. Some of them, I'm not sure I'll ever be like the Virgin Islands or American Samoa. That's gonna be hard to cut. But yeah, off the top of my head, I don't remember. But I've definitely been to quite a bit of national park units as well that aren't necessarily the capital national parks.
Yeah. I've been to USVI 3 or 4 times. I
Oh
love
wow.
diving. It's beautiful. Highly
Yeah.
recommend. But I don't know when I'm gonna make to American Samoa myself. Might be the last one. And it's funny because to me when I think of national parks or of this podcast, right, I'll always think of the 63 that we know of. And Chuck Sams, who you and I both absolutely love, schooled me. He's like, there are over 400 national park units. You should visit all of them if
Mm-hmm.
possible. And I'm like, I know I should. I just, so much to do, so little time. So, so I'm going to try and visit a lot more of public lands in general. And I really love the story, the way you said, right? In the South, there are many quote unquote stamps you could collect. And that's one of the regions that I haven't been to
Mm.
myself. Versus compared to Northeast, where, I'll go to White Mountains every other weekend in the summer because it's accessible and close to me.
Yeah, I definitely recommend visiting the parks of the South. They're incredible, certainly of our history and our natural landscapes.
Awesome. So I have to ask you about your favorite stamp or a stamp memory. Is there a particular one that you look at and brings back memories with friends or family, or something that changed the way you see or think about the world?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I have to say it might be the stamps that I've gotten from Fort Sumter.
Love that. I know it will take us to the story, the essay as well. Guys, I'm going to link the essay in the podcast notes and also on the socials. You should definitely read it. Very sweet about Kai and his memories associated with that. Why don't we do that? Why don't we turn the story towards your passport, which became such a big memory in itself?
Yeah, at Fort Sumter, again, I was able to spend some time in the South, and as I had in the past, most of the national parks I visited were these beautiful landscapes and environments and ecosystems and geologic formations, what have you. And I wouldn't say I'm a war buff or have a heightened appreciation of war history. per se, but certainly understanding it's a really important part of America. Certainly, as coming into America 250, thinking about our history and our past is really important. And certainly, the South, a lot of that is shaped by things like the Civil War, which for folks who don't know, Fort Sumter is the catalyst for the Civil War. The Battle of Fort Sumter was the beginning of what was the Civil War. And this is in Charleston, South Carolina. And Charleston, South Carolina is a gorgeous colonial historical city, very beautiful area, sits on the water, really rich history and culture there. Would encourage anyone to visit Charleston. But a part of Charleston is the opportunity to go to Fort Sumter. And to visit Fort Sumter, it is its own island off of the park. And certainly compared to maybe Al Royale or Dry Tortugas, it's much more accessible, more like a ferry than a whole hours long boat ride. Um, but yeah, so I went out to visit that park, and this was on a solo road trip that I was taking down to Charleston and Savannah, and then ultimately to Atlanta to stay with a friend of mine there. And when I was in Fort Sumter, I got the stamp, had a great time, was able to chat with people. And a lot of the people who visit that park actually are military veterans. So I was able to chat with military veterans about their experience and familiarity with the US military and military history. And that was a really great opportunity to connect with people who I certainly in my life have had family members who are veterans or friends of mine who have served, but being able to connect with folks who have that heightened awareness and familiarity with military history and service in the U.S. military, and being able to learn more about the Civil War at that park was a really incredible opportunity. But what has struck me about my experience at Fort Sumter was all of that, but more particularly my experience with my national park passport, in which I had lost my passport. And at this point, I had been collecting stamps for some 8 years. Um, had mostly filled up my passport. It had become my most prized possession. It was the symbol and material item that connected me to the most profound and deep love and hobby that I've had in my life, which are our national parks and public lands and all the experiences I've carried with that. So it's one of the few physical embodiments of everything that I so deeply am fond of and love. And I had lost it at the park. And I didn't realize until I got down to my friend's place in Atlanta, because there actually are some other parks, or national park units as well in the greater Atlanta area, the Chattahoochee River, Kennesaw Mountain, that's another battlefield. So we were planning on going there and hiking, which I always love. And I always love taking my friends hiking and whatnot. I'm more of the public lands guy in my friend groups. So these are friends that don't always go hiking, but whenever I'm around, that's one of the things I say, okay, we gotta go. We gotta go to a park. Let's go visit. Let's go learn. Let's go check it out. And while we were about to leave, I realized that I didn't have my passport, and I was searching all over. At that point in time, I had been sleeping out of my car in parking lots uh, down the coast of the South there, or the coast southeast, and figured maybe I dropped it in there, had it in my backpack. It was nowhere to be found, and I thought at that point on that I had officially lost my passport, and I wasn't sure what was going to happen with it. And I was pretty frantic about it. I know that I had written an address down. It was actually my parents' place at the time. I wasn't there, but it's where they lived. I wasn't sure how faded the ink was, though, or how legible it was, because I had written down my name and address when I first got the passport back in 2015 at Olympic when I was a child, and figured, oh, even if it was found, it's very unlikely that it got called in. So I, at that point, was sort of resigned to the reality that I would not get it back. And then I got back from Atlanta, back to my house, and spent some time reflecting, talking with my folks about it, grieving, so to speak, which was hard because, my friend, while I was looking, it was clear that I was very distressed, but it was over an item that he didn't really hold that connection to or fully understand the gravity of its meaning to me. And, I think there's a sort of cliche saying that you don't know how much you love something until it's gone. And that might have played a part in it as well. I really had that profound understanding in that moment that, oh, okay, this is actually really important to me. It's not just some worn out book. I always try to live by the idea that, material things can be replaced. And obviously that is true. And maybe if I had lost it permanently, I was thinking to myself, okay, I lose this permanently. It's an opportunity to start anew, get a new passport and go again and rebuild those memories from new experiences. But still, at that point, it was a pretty intense experience for me going through that those emotions that I had lost my passport. And ultimately, I decided this was a week or two after the fact. I'd gotten back home, settled down, unpacked from a little trip, and decided I would call the park itself and call it in for lost and found. And went to voicemail, and I had called and mentioned that I had lost it, and um, where I thought I had lost it, it was likely a visitor center because I didn't remember having it out anywhere. It's possible that it had fallen on the boat or on the park itself. If I had an unzipped bag, what have you. And luckily enough, I got a call back some days later, and they had said that they did in fact find a park or find a passport. Sorry, and had mailed it to an address that they thought it was. And as they I was confirming with them the address, and this was park staff, by the way. I was so thankful that they were able to barely read out what was still left because it was faded at that point with the address, and they were able to mail it to my parents' house at the time. And I was just filled with so much gratitude. These were staff members who were able to find this passport and mail it back on the park's dime. This wasn't something that I had to cover. This is just a service that they provided for me. So they paid for the postage and to ship it all the way cross country from South Carolina to Northwest Washington State, where my parents were. And sure enough, a week or two later, my parents received it, and then they subsequently mailed it to me where I was, North Carolina at that time. And, this was a few week long adventure, and the relief I had when I heard that they had found it and had already gone through the process of mailing it. I was filled with so much joy and relief, and really grew a strong appreciation for the effort that they put in, because that's not something that the Park Service was obligated to do. They could have thrown it into a lost and found bin and then donated it later on. They could have thrown it away or not given it a second look. But the fact that they went through the effort to actually mail it to my family and get it back to me so I could then continue to utilize it and appreciate it, that meant so much to me. And I then donated to the local Friends organization of Fort Sumter as a little token of appreciation, because I don't, not that I'm aware of, you can't donate directly to the park aside from the donation boxes that they have on site. So that was really just a grounding moment for me, and appreciation for the level of respect that they had for my passport in bringing it back to me in a moment where I was pretty certain that I was not going to get it back, just based on my own silliness and mistake. And I'm fairly certain that what happened was I had stamped it and then got distracted by something and walked away. And it was left there on the front desk table at the visitor center in Charleston, South Carolina.
That is such a sweet story on multiple levels to me, right? One, your journey of losing the passport and then finding it, and the way you describe how you felt now and even in your essay is just so sweet and shows how much does the stamp, the booklet, and also public lands mean to you. But also on other levels, right? Like national parks itself are sweet to find something and mail it back, as you said, on their own dime, and just the kindness that comes out of it. I read this essay, and it immediately made me think of all the times and all the people that I've met in the national parks, and most of them are really, really good, kind, wonderful people who truly love the outdoors. Let me ask you this question specifically about the passport. Did losing and recovering change what it meant to you? Did it affect you as a person? Do you go now totally by this is my prized possession, or are you now in the camp where everything physical can be replaced, the memories last?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of both of that. I do want to just quickly echo off of what you said. Yeah, the compassion that these staff members have for our parks and for the people who visit them is incredible. And I'm sure that they deal with a lot of people, variety of visitors, both folks who are great and maybe folks who are not as great to serve. But yeah, I really do want to just give my appreciation to a lot of these folks who work at our national parks and the many things that they are going through day to day to ensure that visitors have the best experience that they possibly can have, whilst also protecting and conserving these prized places of our country. So, yeah, just want to echo that gratitude. And if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have had my passport. But to your question, as far as if I how that experience shaped my perspective around the passport and my experience visiting these parks with this booklet. I think certainly at some point in time, the book is getting full. It's not one of those big binders, and there's only so many added pages I can get. I think at some point at time I'm gonna have to retire it. Um, I try not to think about that point in time, and I always am looking for little small nooks and crannies in the book to add a stamp where it's appropriate, especially for regions where I have visited frequently. I've also sometimes I'll added stamps repeatedly if I've been to a park more than once, just to the date. I'll add other stamps that I know I've been to um, for the sake of saving space. But certainly, I think you know the passport itself, it certainly in of it by itself is impressive to have stamps that are physical to signify that you went. But those experiences will always be with you in memory. And that's what's the most important part. And with those experiences come not just memories, but new relationships, new experiences, new opportunities from visiting those parks, new learning lessons. There's certainly many mistakes I've made in traveling national parks. A lot of them you have to be prepared for or learn something new, whether it be recreating, you could be learning to canoe for the first time or learning to hike in really hot weather and how to deal with that. So there's a lot that you can get out of visiting national parks beyond just enjoyment and relaxation. They are really an opportunity to build out yourself and grow as a person. And there's a lot of growing that I think I've done through national parks that I wouldn't have been able to do otherwise if I didn't have that opportunity, both in my own personal skills and also just my awareness and knowledge about our environment or how I operate in these landscapes and outdoor spaces. Certainly are things that I've gained from visiting these places. So the national park passport, it's of course is my most prized possession, but I do know that at some point in time I may need to switch to a new one, or if heaven forbid I lose it, what I came with those national parks will always stay with me. And as a bit of a side note, as I had mentioned, as a kid growing up, I loved collecting things and would collect things all the time. I wasn't only collecting stamps when I visit national parks. I love buying patches as well from these visitor centers. And I have them just in a bag right now. I'm debating between if I want to iron them onto a blanket and put it on a big wall when I'm in my forever home, what have you, or if I want to put them on a jacket and wear them like a expensive designer brand flex with all the different places I've been to. So I've collected patches, I've collected stickers. I've also more recently in the past few years been collecting magnets. In my place in North Carolina, I had a fridge that was just littered with magnets from places and national parks that I visited. So I have a routine when I go to a visitor center is to look for patches, look for stickers and magnets to commemorate my visit beyond just the passport stamp. The passport stamp certainly is the most everlasting, consistent item that I've collected, and they're also free. The password book itself, I mean, it's not that expensive, but the stamps themselves are free. Um, I know some people like to do penny presses, which are really cool. Other folks like to collect different stickers or other items or memorabilia. But for me, patches have been one of the more common things that I've had in tandem with those uh, passport stamps. So I know that no matter what, whether it be the pictures I took, the experiences, the memories I've gained, or patches that I've purchased as well, there are ways that I can always remember and appreciate and think fondly back on my experiences and maybe remind myself that it's an opportunity to go again or go to somewhere new. Um, so yeah, the passport has been the center and the integral piece of those experiences, but certainly I know that there's so much that's added on to the joy that someone gets, or certainly for myself, that I get out of visiting national parks that goes beyond just me running to the visitor center front desk or looking. And sometimes it's a scavenger hunt just in the visitor center trying to locate where the stamps are, or they're not always out. Um, but when you can find them, it's great to stamp it, and and sometimes it's even a game of patience. It teaches you that you go all this way to a visitor center and then you see there's a line of people taking stamps, and you feel like you made it just there, and then you just gotta wait a little bit while the folks ahead of you make stamps. And in that time, I've made conversation and built connection with people when making stamps, because it's a shared hobby. I am certainly not alone in this love and hobby of putting stamps down on my passport book. I know you do yourself, obviously, and the folks that you talk to and meet, and there's so many more where that it's a central hobby and love for them is to add to that passport.
Love everything you just said. I will confess, I have so many iron on patches. I think I have pretty much of all national parks. I started collecting patches and started collecting postcards that I'd
Yeah.
write a little note on and mail to myself years ago. Now I send it to my cat. He can't read, but at least makes me look less crazy when I address it to Jerry and not myself.
Yeah.
And we are recording around 4th of July weekend, not kidding. My friend Kritika and Elizabeth and I were at Acadia, and we went to REI and bought a couple of jackets because they told me I should have a very fancy, expensive jacket full of memories that I can patch it on. But I like the blanket idea, so I might mull over it and eventually decide what I'm going to do. Maybe there will be a time we meet in a park, both of us wearing our jackets with
Yeah.
ironed on patches.
Yeah. Yeah. There's some cool styles you can do with that. I like the blanket aspect because it won't get worn. You can kind of have it as a display.
Yeah.
But wearing it would be cool too. Maybe I know there was a time in which patches on jackets, denim jackets, were very in fashion.
Hmm.
So maybe we'll make that a trend.
Okay, we just have to keep in touch and figure out we do the same thing.
Yeah.
It's funny because they asked me, why am I hesitant to make a jacket, right? And I literally said the same thing. I was like, I'm never going to wear it. Maybe wear it once a year on a special occasion and then put it away so that I don't lose it. It doesn't go bad. Um, and it's the same thing for me, right? It's the memory, it's the connection to the parks. And what I love you said was, even when you're in the line to get your stamp, you will meet so many different people, and the experiences and the conversations are, they range from little kids asking you how many parks you've been to, and now I'm in my 50s. So it immediately sort of gives them a shock, versus like when I would ask people the same question and they'd be like, oh, I'm doing my 63rd park or 62nd park. And I'm like, oh my God, how? I don't know if I'm going to get there. To someone recently I met, Amy, she told me she'd been to Acadia and she gave me the date. She was like, I went to Acadia on July 7th, 1983. And I'm like, oh my God, that's
Wow.
like a lifetime ago. So always fun. But I do want to ask you about the essay itself, or what you just said about the passport itself, right? When people read your essay, I think they immediately understand that this is not just a story about losing a booklet. There's so much more to that. What do you hope that people take away from that story?
Man, such a good question. I think, when I was writing this story, there was certainly a very personal, somewhat selfish aspect to it. A lot of the work I've done in the environmental context was driven by these experiences in national parks and vis-a-vis my passport. And I haven't talked about that with a lot of people. So this was a somewhat liberating experience to kind of convey to folks, hey, this is where it all began for me. And it's certainly an ongoing journey, and it's one that I hope to continue into the future and throughout my life in the environmental world and conservation writ large. But it had a start when I was a kid with this booklet. And because of that connection I had in the work I was doing, in the work I've subsequently done and continue to do and hope to do in the future, that had a source and a start. And I think when I talk to people in the environmental world and in conservation, a lot of that work is driven by their why. Why did they go into this work? Why are they passionate about it? Why are you doing this podcast to share these experiences with people, right? Whether that be their professional work or their volunteer work or what they do in their free time, there's always a nexus or catalyst for why they do what they do and love what they love. And I think for me, this piece was that connector for me. It was able to build that bridge between the things I did when I was growing up, the immense opportunity and privilege I had in visiting these national parks and commemorating them on this booklet, and the work that I decided to pursue from that. And, when I talk to a lot of young people, building passion and building opportunity and drive for folks, that's not always equal. There are some kids, and it's certainly myself. Like, I don't, when people ask, oh, what do you want to do in your life? Like, that's such a big question to grapple with. And I think when I was going through the experiences I had in visiting national parks as a kid and adding these stamps to my passport, I said, I just want to keep doing this, and I want to expand that. How can I build that out for more people? And I think folks who have read my essay, which I'm very grateful that you have, um, building that connection of, hey, this is something that I've loved doing, and I want to be able to amplify that not only for myself, but maybe for others as well, and support the infrastructure that enables me to do that and appreciate it. Um, there's a balance. I know for some people they say don't do what you love as a job because then it becomes a job and it's not no longer what you love. But I think there's a balance in, for myself, I love adding national parks and I love building stamps out onto the passport. But to that point, I really love conservation and environmental justice and all these things in environmental advocacy that enables me to enjoy this and hopefully supports other people. So I think for myself, writing out that essay was really a liberating opportunity to sort of deepen that exploration of why I am doing what I'm doing, why I'm pursuing what I'm doing in the environmental space and advocacy, and how I can continue that into the future based around something that I do in my free time. Now, certainly, when I'm writing, if I'm writing a blog post like I did for NPCA or I've gone to DC to lobby. I'm not looking to do that in my free time. In my free time, I want to hike and go out and visit these places, and that's really the grounding aspect of the work I've done and want to continue to do. Is when I'm in the office on a computer doing something that feels as disconnected from nature as it possibly could. The opportunity to then go to a national park and love that experience and seek that joy really grounds what I'm doing and help stratify my why as to what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis or what I'm hoping to do in the future for work. So yeah, that was really the thrust for my interest in writing that essay and the work that I hope to continue to do in the environmental space.
More power to you. That essay is sweet, but also, as you mentioned, I hope that you continue in this field. I had written the next question, which was going to be my last related to the passports, and I thought I was very smart while writing it. You answered most of it. I'm still going to ask it in case you want to add to it.
Yeah, of
So,
course.
as you mentioned, your work connects you with conservation and public land. So does the essay. Do you think national parks need more ways for people to feel personally invited into them? And how do we, as I can say, I'm a self proclaimed steward, right? How do we help people build more of their own relationship with the parks? And I say that because I've always maintained parks have something for everyone. You can just enjoy sitting at a bench and eating a sandwich, or you can hike the tallest peak, and it'll have something for everyone. So, how do we help people build more of their own relationship with the parks?
Yeah. So I think, there's different facets of how to broaden that participation with national parks. But I think, for folks listening or just day to day, I would just say get people out there, bring people with you, especially friends of yours who maybe aren't traditionally national park people. Now, I've done both. I've gone on road trips, I've gone on camping trips, I've gone on national park trips with friends who are public lands experts and they spend half their time in the woods, uh, communicating with the wildlife. They know nature like the back of their hand, and it's no problem at all for them. And I've also gone with friends who maybe it's their first time going to a national park, or maybe they're very unfamiliar. Even for national parks that are an hour or two away from where they grew up, never visited. Um, and being able to utilize maybe the camping gear you have or the backpack that you have and the other gear that is oftentimes very cost prohibitive for people and saying, hey, I have these things. Let's go explore. Let's go visit and enjoy this place and gain that takeaway. And for other folks, it might be, hey, I have a friend who loves history, or I have a friend who loves, World War history or the Civil War, for example. There's so many places you can go to that are a part of our national park units system that you're able to go and gain something from. So yeah, like one of my experiences at Joshua Tree, I had a really close friend of mine, a still really close friend of mine, who grew up in LA, but had not really been to Joshua Tree. And Joshua Tree is only an hour or two from LA, depending on the horrific traffic that is LA. But again, it's not that far. It's quite accessible and it's incredible. It is amongst the top 10 for me, at least, of national parks. It's one of my favorites. It's so gorgeous and unbelievable. The landscapes there are incredible. And I invited my friend and said, "Hey, let's go car camping and go visit this place." And our experience was incredible. We had a lot of issues, which is a story for another time, separate from the national park itself, car issues, whole thing. Um, but the experience was incredible, and I know that he, since that time, went to other parks in California with his friends and family. They went out to Sequoia, elsewhere throughout California. And I'm not going to claim any credit for initiating that, but that's a shared appreciation that him and I have that we'll talk about for someone who maybe doesn't visit the national parks at the same rate that I've had the immense privilege to. And that's something that I love sharing with friends and family with are those experiences and opportunities. And I think that really goes beyond any other barriers that people have. There's people that I talk to that maybe we're not super similar either politically or culturally, but we can share that experience and say, hey, I went out to Great Smoky Mountains over the weekend and had a great time, and say, oh my gosh, tell me about it. Tell me everything about it. What'd you do? How was it? Um, and no single park experience is the same for anybody, even yourself. So, you could go to, as you mentioned, you go to the White Mountains. You could go there every weekend in a row every year, and your experience will be unique every time. And they have different opportunities and things that you can do. I know certain parks I go to, I just love to hike. I just love to go sightseeing. I love to drive around and look around. For some people, maybe they want to bring their horse and ride horseback through the national park. Maybe they are really into rock hounding and they really like rocks and geology, or maybe they love mushrooms and go mushroom foraging. There's just so many different things. And I've had many friends and family that have been able to utilize that and go to these places. So I would just simply say go out there, bring people with you, share those experiences. Experiences are incredible alone, but they're even better with company. And that's something I really would resonate with folks. But beyond that, I think there are very tangible things you can donate to local organizations that are working to protect your local park. You can certain organizations like NPCA are doing really incredible work on behalf of park advocates. And you can volunteer as well. If there's a park that's in your area or elsewhere that you really feel a strong tie to, I certainly would encourage someone to volunteer for that. Donate your time or money or what have you. And then there are other things just in your local community to help protect and strengthen your community, whether that be doing something for the natural environment or for your community that really supports places that are strong centers of community and refuge for people. So yeah, our national parks, they're as diverse as our country, and they provide so much for everybody, whether they are culturally significant, like Stonewall in New York City, or of natural beauty, like Yellowstone and Yosemite, which they also themselves have cultural significance in history, which are really important for people to learn. So yeah, I think there are so many things that people can do to expand participation and our shared love of national parks and our passports. And I think just the first step is getting out there and finding a way if possible.
I love that. Guys, I think Kai has done such a great job on not only motivating us to be more outdoors, but also the work that he does through NPCA. I'm going to make a small donation today. I hope you will as well, because outdoors really matter. And people like Kai are working towards making that more accessible for the rest of us.
Thank you so much, Mega.
So before I let you go, though, I have to ask you, right? What is your favorite national park stamp in your passport? That's the theme. So you have to pick one, and you can choose to tell us a story of why you picked that one.
I have to look extensively, but I think certainly Fort Sumter is really like it is
Oh,
incredible.
that doesn't count. That
Okay,
that
okay.
is the whole story of this episode.
Well,
That I mean, I won't let you count it. So you need
okay.
something else.
I'll be different than other people, and I will say hot springs. I actually have it here. I don't know if you can see it. It's literally a bathtub. Um, and you mentioned like visiting outdoors and protecting outdoors. And I think you know, part of what I believe makes national parks so special is the fact that they're not just the wild landscapes and outdoors, they're also indoors and buildings and historic places. And I went to Hot Springs. If you don't know, it's in Arkansas, small town in Arkansas, and it's literally about these bathhouses that are hot springs. It is a national park as well. Some people may have an opinion about that. I think all national parks are of equal value, whether it's Gateway or Hot Springs or Yosemite. Um, I really enjoyed. I thought the town was so cute and it was so different than what I had experienced. I mean, obviously, no words can justify the experience that someone has at a great capital national park like Yellowstone or Yosemite or Mount Rainier or what have you, Grand Canyon. But I really enjoyed Little Hot Springs, and it provided me an opportunity to learn about a history of a region and a concept that I had no knowledge about. I had never been to a bathhouse before. I'm not from the South or Arkansas or the East Coast even. In learning about that, this was something that people did, and the buildings were preserved, and it really was like a time capsule to a time past. And it's a bathtub. It's just so funny, like some of these stamps, they're of a beautiful animal or a landscape, but Hot Springs is just very simply a bathtub with some ornaments around it. So that's what I will be different and say that one to you. I really don't know that I have. People ask me what's my favorite national park, and I hate that question because they're just so different and incomparable from one another. I can't choose a favorite. So I think similarly with my passports, um, I've had such amazing experiences from all of them. Some maybe better than others, but Hot Springs, it really is a park that I've enjoyed. I've been more than once, so I've managed to find my way back because I do love it. I really do love it. Even though Arkansas, Hot Springs, Arkansas, is not the most uh, direct on the way convenient place to go to if you're not in the area. So that is the stamp I will give you. And if you're not happy with that, then I apologize. But that's how it is. Like I really do like it, and it's just so different for me.
No, I absolutely give you that one. I actually have never been. And the reason is that it's not on my way to anything. So I'm that's going to be like my American Samoa kind or
Hmm.
Okopiuk Valley where I have to make a special effort and I will hopefully soon. Um, when I was trying to find people to talk about different parks, it's one of those parks where I don't really have a historian or a writer or someone who has a story that we can talk about. Except I do know there is a story related to um, mafia. I may be very wrong. It's absolutely unresearched. So, I might be absolutely lying to you all. But I think there is a story to do with mafia who would use the hot springs per se to cure syphilis or something. And guys, again, please don't hold me to it. I may be very wrong. However, if you have suggestions on who I can call up and invite to this podcast for hot springs, I'll take it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I don't know any experts personally on that park, but yeah, I definitely encourage you to chat with someone about that. That's awesome.
And I agree with you. The question of what's your favorite national park is hard. I have thought long and hard, and I now give top three. And I've spoken about it in other episodes as well. But it took me a good week or two of mulling over which one do I like for what reason. I know which ones I don't like, those are easy. But the ones that are your favorite, it's just how am I going to rate it? They are all so different and beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. My stamps have signified different experiences at different times, and I always try and carry my passport with me, even if I don't plan on going to a park, because whether or not you know it, there might be a park near where you're going or a part of something that you're doing. Um, I've gone on professional trips and conferences. You had I'd met Chuck Sams, and I had him sign my passport because I had brought it with me to a professional conference in DC where I had no plan of going to a park at that point, but thought to myself, just in case. And that was so incredible. Or I've been to a conference in Puerto Rico as well, an environmental conference, and I went to some of the historic forts and also El Yunque National Forest there to get stamps. And that was not, none of that was planned. I didn't know I was going to do any of that. It was an incredible experience. Just the same as a trip where you plan out all this time. The times I've been to Yellowstone and spent all this time dedicated to planning it and driving all the way out there. And you get there and it's a feeling of accomplishment and achievement, as I had mentioned earlier. Uh, I relish just the same as the times when it wasn't planned, but it happened. And it's still really cool to be able to visit these places, whether or not you put in all the effort and time. So I try to carry the passport with me as often as I can. Maybe that's part of why I lost it because I always have it around. But
I also love the story that you got your passport signed by Chuck Sams. He's on one of our episodes, and man, I wish I'd remembered. I would have asked him for an autograph on mine.
yeah,
But he's a professor or head of something. I apologize. I'm blanking right now. At Yale. So, he's on the East Coast, and maybe I'll bug him to meet and get a picture with him as well. But guys, I'm going to
yeah,
put Kai's picture with Chuck Sams on our socials as well when we release this episode.
yeah. No, definitely. I'm sure you can give him a holler. I know he's at the Yale Center for Environmental Justice, which
Thank
is a
you. I was
yes,
absolutely blanking like what he does there, and it's very significant and actually quite important. So I know he's at Yale, and I was like, oh my God, I can't remember what he does.
yeah. No, incredible, incredible individual for certain. But Yeah.
Also so easy to talk to, right? Like, and that's why I love national parks and people associated with it, because if you reach out to him, very likely he'll send you a response, and super kind, super nice, loves the outdoors, obviously, and just a great guy overall. So,
Yeah. Amazing.
all right, guys, that was Tran taking us through a national park journey measured not only in miles but in ink. Such a relevant episode because he spoke about his first stamp, the growing collection, the lost passport, the return, and how all those memories and the passport itself feeds into his work and life mission. At National Park Stamp Quest, every stamp marks more than a visit. It's a moment, it's a memory, and sometimes a story we did not expect to carry home. And Kai's story truly reminds us that a passport stamp is never just ink on paper. It can hold who we are, who we've traveled with, what we've learned, and what somehow found its way back to us. Keep your passports close and your stories closer. Until the next stamp, thank you for listening. I'm Mega Analkar at National Park Stamp Quest.